Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Star Wars Legends Lounge, the show that celebrates the books from Star Wars Legends. I'm Aaron Moats. Coming up on today's show, we take a look at the life and history of the fastest hunk of junk in the galaxy. Han, Leia, and their granddaughter, Alana, embark on an adventure to find the original owner of the Millennium Falcon. But they're not the only ones looking into the ship's history. Someone else is investigating the old YT-1300, someone who's searching for a 60-year-old treasure, and they're convinced the old freighter holds the key to finding it. It's Millennium Falcon by James Luceno, and I'll talk about the book coming up in just a few minutes. But first, we've made it to August. I hope everyone has been enjoying their summer. Now we're closing in on back to school season here in the United States. My niece will be a junior in high school this year, and my nephew will be entering the 8th grade, his final year in middle school. Man, time flies as you get older. I remember babysitting both of them when they were infants. Hopefully, all of you listeners have a plan for your back-to-school preparations, if you need them. School will be starting soon, and then, just around the corner, autumn will be here in the Northern Hemisphere. My personal favorite season. I can't wait for it. But enough about the calendar. Let's get to a listener question. Today's email comes from Robin, who has 2 questions for me. Robin says, "Hello, Aaron. I noticed that the term anti-hero is used very differently in modern Star Wars media. You can almost use it for everyone, even clear villains. That made me curious. How was the word used in your younger days? Did it even exist in your childhood? In your opinion, who would be an anti-hero in Star Wars? Has the term changed for you over the years? And finally, just for fun, what would your Sith name be?" Well, thank you very much for the email, Robin. Let's start with what the term anti-hero means. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines anti-hero as, quote, "a protagonist or notable figure who is conspicuously lacking in heroic qualities," unquote. The first time the word shows up in the English language was 3 centuries ago in 1714. Now, I'm not that old, Robin. That's pretty much what I've understood the term to be for as long as I can remember. Now, I think it's up to each person what they consider as a character who is lacking in heroic qualities. When it comes to Star Wars, I wouldn't consider Han Solo, the one that we meet in A New Hope, as an anti-hero, but I could see where some people would. It's the same with someone like Cassian Andor. I wouldn't consider him an anti-hero, but I bet some people would. For me, the Star Wars anti-heroes are characters like Luthen Rael, Clea Markey, Asajj Ventress in the months after she left Count Dooku. As far as Legends characters go, one of the ones I thought of is Zavari from the Crystal Star. Is she doing a good thing by hunting down former Imperial officers and bringing them to justice? Yes. But her methods? She's pretty ruthless, and she doesn't really seem to care if she really hurts or even kills someone. She definitely lives by the motto, the ends justify the means. Honestly, Robin, anti-hero characters are sort of hit or miss for me. I've never really been drawn to a character like Anakin Skywalker or Boba Fett or Saul Guerrera or adult Jason Solo. But then I find characters like Kira from the Solo film interesting. She's kind of an anti-hero. And I love Luthen and Clea from Andor. And Barriss Offee. Maybe, although she's more, it's just a confused woman who was radicalized by the Clone Wars. I've even heard a few people try to say that Darth Bane was kind of an anti-hero. He's not. People are entitled to their own opinions and interpretations of stories and characters, but that's one that I disagree with. Bane is not an anti-hero. He's just a villain. Now, Robin, as for what my Sith name would be, I don't know. I'm a pretty cynical person in real life, and I've told you all before, I have a very narrow sense of humor, so maybe Darth Sardonic. That might be a good Sith name for me. Anyway, thank you again for the questions, Robin. Listener, if you'd like to ask me a question, you can email me at swlegendslounge@gmail.com. You can also send me a message on Blue Sky, Instagram, or Twitter at swlegendslounge. And if you'd like to get your voice on the show, record a short message and email it in. But please record it in MP3 audio format. Now, coming up at the end of the show, I've got another Star Wars character group to share with everyone. This one is from Charlie, so you'll want to stick around for that. Now it's time for today's book, Millennium Falcon by James Luceno. Grab yourself a drink. Let's head in to the Star Wars Legends Lounge. The story begins more than 100 years in the past, 60 years before the Battle of Yavin. The Millennium Falcon rolls off the assembly line and begins its life hauling freight around the Old Republic. Flash forward 40 years, and we find the galaxy in turmoil, embroiled in the final year of the Clone Wars. The Falcon is owned by a former swoop racer turned smuggler named Tob Jadik. Jadik and his co-pilot Reese Durman find themselves right in the middle of the Battle of Coruscant. Jadik follows a damaged capital ship down through the atmosphere and lands the Falcon and meets up with members of a shadowy organization calling itself the Republic Group. Jadik and Durman speak with a couple of senators on the landing pad while a Jedi installs something inside the ship. The group then tells Jadik and Durman to fly to the planet Tapwara. There, they will meet an Antarian ranger who will point them in the direction of a hidden treasure, one designed to restore the honor of the Republic from the power-hungry clutches of Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. But the plan goes awry when the Falcon gets ready to make the jump to hyperspace. The ship is rocked by a laser blast and loses its shields. Jadik decides they can't wait for the navicomputer to calculate the jump to Tapwara. Instead, he decides to make a quick jump to Nar Shaddaa, hoping to make repairs. The Falcon returns to real space and finds itself right in the path of an enormous cargo barge. The barge crashes into the Falcon, killing Jadik and Durman, nearly destroying the ship. Shortly thereafter, the Falcon is salvaged by a crime boss named Reg Taunt. His mechanics repair the damage, install some not quite legal upgrades, and then the Falcon joins Reg Taunt's cache of smuggling vessels. We move ahead 60 years to present day. Han and Leia have become the guardians of their granddaughter, Alana. To maintain the illusion that the 7-year-old Chumeda died at the end of the galaxy's war with Jacen Solo, Han and Leia have disguised Alana as a war orphan that they've adopted named Amelia. One day when the family visits a planet in the deep core, Alana finds a palm-sized device attached to the back of a bulkhead behind the Falcon's engineering station. When Alana and Leia ask Han what the device is, Han admits that he's never seen it before. He's never noticed it. He asks 3PO, but the droid can find no match for the device anywhere in its database. With their curiosity piqued, the Solos decide to delve into the Falcon's history to find out when the ship was built, who were its previous owners, which one may have installed the mysterious device and what that device's purpose is. The adventure begins with a trip to meet up with Lando Calrissian. Nob Jadick wakes up on a Broa sky. The former captain learns that he's been kept alive in a hyperbaric coma for more than 60 years. While Jadick convalesces and tries to catch back up on 62 years of galactic history, he begins to think about his final moments before the crash. What happened to the ship? Did anyone find the treasure? Is the treasure still out there waiting to be discovered? After a few days, an attorney named Koi Kier meets with Jadick to present him with an insurance payout now that he's awake. Jadick asks who is paid to keep him alive for 6 decades. It turns out Jadick's treatments have been paid by a wealthy defense lawyer named Lestra Oxick. Now that Jadick is awake, Oxick puts the former pilot under surveillance, hoping that Jadick will lead him to wherever the treasure is hidden. After talking to Lando, the Solos start digging into the Falcon's past. They learn that in addition to hauling cargo, the ship was used in a traveling circus. It carried patients as a converted medical transport, and it was once stolen from an Imperial impoundment lot by the rebellion. At one stop, Alana is held hostage by a group of thugs who want Han and Leia to have Lando deliver a batch of 20 YVH droids. But Alana and the Solos are saved by a Jedi Knight named Seth Helen. Helen kills most of the thugs, terrifying Alana, who tells Leia that the Jedi feels like her father, Jason. When the authorities come to take the surviving thugs into custody, they also demand that the Jedi comes in for questioning. Helen refuses. He uses the Force to paralyze the officers and then flees the scene. Jadick makes his way to Nar Shaddaa, where he learns about Reg Taunt and what happened to the Falcon after his crash. Jadick entices a young pickpocket named Flitcher Post to help him look for the ship. Eventually, they track down the Falcon to the planet Vased, where they meet up with a man named Quip Fargle, the former rebel agent who stole the ship from an Imperial impoundment lot. Posing as Fargle, Jadick asks Han Solo if he and Post can fly with the Solos on the next leg of their journey. But Leia has a bad feeling about the two, and eventually she and Han force the men to tell them what's really going on. Jadick tells Han and Leia about his history with the Falcon, his final mission for the Republic group, and waking up after 60 years in a coma. Han shows Jadick the device that Alana found, and after Jadick types a code into the Falcon's navicomputer, the device emits a signal, pointing them to an uninhabited planet, Tandon 3. When the group reaches Tandon 3, they find a world on the brink of shaking itself apart, a result of the intense terraforming from the Yuuzhan Vong 15 years prior. Still, something on the planet is emitting a signal. Han sets the Falcon down precariously on the top of what looks like an ancient ziggurat, triggering an elevator that drops the ship down to the base of the temple. There, the group finds the treasure, but it isn't a cache of gems or credits or priceless works of art. What they find is just one artifact, 3 meters in diameter. It's the symbol of the Old Republic, Leia says. I remember seeing one like it hanging in the old Hall of Justice. But this is not that one, a voice says from behind the group. It's Oxick, Kier, and some of Oxick's men. This emblem hung in the Senate Rotunda, Oxic explains. It's made of 3 precious metals, and I've been looking for it for more than 40 years. Oxic runs a scanner over the artifact to confirm its authenticity. Something's wrong, he says. It's a fake! The real emblem must have been stolen decades ago. Suddenly, the wall of the temple cracks, signaling it's time to go. Oxic asks Jadik and Post to join him in continuing the search for the emblem, while Han, Leia, and Alana jump back into the Falcon. The 2 ships escape the atmosphere just as Tandem 3 splits itself apart. With their search complete, the Solos offer to take Alana on a short trip to Hapes to visit her mother. But just before they make the jump to lightspeed, Leia receives a holomessage. The Galactic Alliance has issued a warrant for Luke's arrest. The charge? Dereliction of duty in allowing Jason to fall to the dark side and terrorize the galaxy. The story ends with the Solos putting their trip to Hapes on hold. Luke is going to need them on Coruscant. And what better way to get there as quickly as possible? Flying the fastest hunk of junk in the galaxy, of course. Time to take a break. When I return, I'll talk more about Millennium Falcon. I'm Aaron Moats. You're listening to the Star Wars Legends Lounge. Thank you for listening to the Star Wars Legends Lounge, where we celebrate the books from Star Wars Legends. But let me take a moment and recommend a book from Star Wars canon. The Eye of Darkness is the first novel in Phase 3 of the High Republic. The Nile have separated part of the Outer Rim from the Republic and trapped several Jedi Knights behind enemy lines. Can the Republic and the Jedi breach the storm wall and reunite the galaxy, or will they fall further into Marchion Ro's trap? Check out Eye of Darkness by George Mann. Welcome back to the Star Wars Legends Lounge, the show that celebrates the books from Star Wars Legends. I'm Aaron Moats, and today I'm talking about the novel Millennium Falcon by James Luceno. All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room here, or should I say, the Falcon in the room. Because James Luceno structures part of this book and definitely structures the ending to reference the noir classic, The Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett. Parts of Jadik's story remind you of Sam Spade's story. Oxic is definitely Casper Gutman. There's really no one-for-one comparison with a lot of the other characters, but just having those 2 in there, and especially the ending, where Oxic tests the Old Republic artifact and realizes it's a fake. Basically the same exact ending as the Maltese Falcon. Spoiler alert, everyone, for a book that's over 80 years old. And then, of course, the classic Humphrey Bogart film from the early 40s. For those of you who have read The Maltese Falcon or have seen the film, it's a story about obsession. Now, this book is not about obsession, but you could say Oxic's part of the story is about a man obsessed with this one priceless artifact and how he both employs and uses Jadik without Jadik's knowledge. Similar to how Gutman uses Sam Spade in The Maltese Falcon. It's been a long time since I've read this book. This is only the second time that I've read it. I guess I didn't pick up on this the first time because this is something I definitely would have remembered. Yes, I'm in my late 40s now, and I know I don't remember everything that I used to, but I would have remembered this because I read The Maltese Falcon when I was in high school. I've seen the movie twice, I think. I know I've seen it the whole way through once. I've probably seen it twice. If not, I've seen most of it a second time. I remember the ending of the film and how it mirrored the ending of the book. If I would have picked up on the way this ending was written the first time that I read it, I would have remembered it. But I will say, when I read it this time, as soon as Oxic says the emblem is a fake, my senses went up. And then when he starts coming up with reasons for it to be a fake, that the real one still must be out there somewhere, that a contractor stole it when there was construction going on in the Senate rotunda, that someone from Palpatine's cabinet must have taken it. It's the same thing that happens to Caspar Gutman at the end of The Maltese Falcon, when we learn the Falcon is not this valuable artifact. Gutman has been obsessed with it for so long, he can't accept it. The only explanation is this is a fake. The real Falcon has to still be out there somewhere. Whether it is or not, we don't really know. Personally, I think our protagonist, Sam Spade, does not believe there is a real Falcon. I think he believes the one that they found is, and it's just not nearly as valuable as Gutman and all the other people in the story who are searching for it believe it to be. That part they never really address at the end of this book. We never really hear whether Han or Leia or Jadik or Post or any of the other people there at the ending besides Oxic believe that this is really a fake, that maybe what Oxic has been told about the original Old Republic artifact is not actually the case, or maybe that original artifact, since it was made of 3 valuable metals, maybe it was melted down 60 years ago and it no longer exists. And they just made this other Old Republic symbol and hung it up. It looked the same, looked exactly the same. But we never get whether Han or Leia believe there really is this authentic Old Republic symbol out there. And it's because as soon as they discover that this is not what Oxic is looking for, all of a sudden they have to go. The planet is starting to split apart. I will say that aspect of the story was one thing that I wasn't a big fan of, that this treasure has been hidden for 60 years, that Han and Leia and Jadik and Oxic are closing in on it now, and on the very day that they show up on Tandon 3 is the last day of the planet's existence. The Yuuzhan Vong War was 15 years ago. Nearly 15 years ago. I think it's actually like 13 or 14, but it's nearly 15 years ago. We don't know exactly when they dropped all their terraforming organic material on Tandon 3. The book never really mentions if Tandon 3 had any sort of native sentient population before the Yuuzhan Vong got there. The book just says that it's an uninhabited world. But we do know that there's a ziggurat on there, at least one. Somebody made it. Those aren't naturally forming, especially ones that have an elevator that go down. Now, I guess maybe that could have been built by the Republic group. I don't think the book ever says that it looks like it's an ancient ziggurat. It could be something that was fairly recently made. All we know is that the book says that it's an uninhabited planet, and the day that all these people show up to find the answer to the treasure that was hidden there is the last day of the planet's existence. One of those little coincidences that is just a little too much for me. It didn't break the book, but a little too much for me. We did learn 2 of the previous names for the Falcon in this story. When Jadik was flying it 60 years ago, the name of the ship was Stellar Envoy. After the crash that nearly destroyed the ship, that nearly killed Jadik, and it went into Reg Taunt's smuggling fleet, eventually it was renamed Second Chance. I can't remember if that's still when Reg Taunt had it or if it was the owner right after that, the man who owned the traveling circus. But one of them named it the Second Chance. And then after it was stolen from the Imperial impoundment lot, Quip Fargle, he's the man who named it Millennium Falcon. So we did learn where the name came from. I like the masquerade that the Solos have going on with Allana, that they set up at the end of the Legacy of the Force series, where she's basically disguised in plain sight as a war orphan that they call Amelia. Only their closest family members know that this is really Allana, Jason and Tenel Ka's daughter. Only Han, Leia, Jaina, Luke, and Ben. That's it. 3PO and R2. But that's it. When they show up to speak with Lando Calrissian, Lando doesn't know. Lando believes this is a war orphan named Amelia. He's one of their closest friends, but they can't risk the knowledge of Allana's identity getting out there. So they can't tell Lando. No one within the Galactic Alliance government knows. None of the other Jedi know. As far as we know, none of the other Jedi know. And no one on Hapes knows, outside of her mother, Tenel Ka. That's it. That's the conspiracy. To keep Allana, the Chume Da, safe. I enjoyed the character of Jadik in this book. Jadik is an old swoop rider and an old ship racer. And we see some of those skills in the story. In fact, he really impresses Han with his ability to fly the Falcon at one point. And then, of course, Han really impresses Jadik with his ability to fly the Falcon. For those of you that are middle-aged, particularly the guys out there that are middle-aged, there's a conversation that Han and Jadik have in the cockpit of the Falcon that is a lot like a bunch of middle-aged men enjoying a beer together and just talking about high school football, high school baseball, high school basketball, whatever you want to talk about. You can hear Bruce Springsteen's Glory Days playing in the background as they talk about their experiences in swoop races, in Jadik's starship races. And then, of course, Han can talk about performing the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. That's a pretty funny scene. It is. It's a pretty funny scene for those of us at a certain age. In my experience, a lot of middle-aged men like myself do this. I'm sure a lot of women do this as well. But this really did remind me of dudes meeting up at a barbecue, in a bar, at a restaurant, and just talking about high school sports from back when they played. So it was an enjoyable scene. It really was. So the last two things I want to talk about that are the most important things in this book projecting forward. The scene of Seth Helen, the Jedi that rescues Alana from the would-be kidnappers and saves Han and Leia, doesn't act particularly the way a Jedi should. Yes, he comes in and saves the day, but then refuses to talk to the authorities when they come in. He kills some of the would-be kidnappers when he does not need to. The situation, I'm not going to say has been completely diffused at that point, but from Leia's point of view, and that's the way that the passage is written, from Leia's point of view, it seems to her that Helen is going way over the top. Alana tells Leia later that Seth Helen feels like her father Jason. And of course, that really, really frightens Leia. What is going on here? When the authorities show up to take the remaining thugs who are alive into custody, they want a statement from Helen. He refuses. They try to stop him from leaving, and he uses the Force to paralyze them. According to Leia, he should not be able to do that. She does not know of that Force ability. And once again, Alana says that Helen feels like Jason. Seth Helen's ability to paralyze these people will be important in the Fate of the Jedi stories once we get to that series. Of course, the other important scene, right at the very end, last 2 pages of the book, Leia gets a holo message. A warrant has been issued for Luke's arrest. The charge is dereliction of duty for allowing Jason Solo to fall to the dark side of the Force and plunge the galaxy into war again. This is the jumping off point for how the Fate of the Jedi series begins. It's the last 2 pages in this book. That's the beginning of the Fate of the Jedi. I won't go into it, listener, because I don't want to spoil anything, but just be aware that that's where we are going to begin once we start Fate of the Jedi. So, it's almost time to go. But before I do, I have another Star Wars character group to share with everyone. This one is from Charlie, who says, "Hi, Aaron. I understand that you haven't received a Star Wars character grouping in a while, so I have composed what I am calling the Army of Darkness. Charlie's fleet. The Separatists and the Imperial fleet with the Invisible Hand as the flagship. Starfighters are Vulture droids, Z-95 headhunters, and TIE fighters. The ground army consists of Separatist battle droids and stormtroopers, with Death Troopers as the squad leaders. Charlie's spies are commando droids. The leaders of the Army of Darkness are General Grievous, Darth Vader, Grand Admiral Thrawn, General Kalani, as well as tactical droids and Imperial officers. Long live the Empire. Thank you very much, Charlie. That is quite an evil army. Listener, if you have a Star Wars character group that you'd like to share with me, or if you have a question, a comment, or an opinion that you'd like me to read on the show, you can send me an email at swlegendslounge@gmail.com, or you can send me a message on Blue Sky, Instagram, or Twitter at swlegendslounge. Now, listener, I need your attention. Coming up on the next episode, I was planning to begin the Fate of the Jedi series. However, and here's where I need your attention, I need to call an audible. You listeners know that I work for the U.S. Air Force. Well, I'm being sent away on a temporary duty assignment for a couple of weeks. Logistically, there's no way to connect with the guest co-hosts for the first book in the Fate of the Jedi series. So, I'm going to shift the beginning of Fate of the Jedi from August 21st back to September 4th. You hear that? We're not starting Fate of the Jedi in the next episode. We're going to start Fate of the Jedi on September 4th, and then it will run through the remainder of the year. But Aaron, you ask, what are you going to do for the next show on your schedule? Well, listener, there is one infamous set of young reader books that I never planned to do on this podcast. I did not plan to ever do them. But I held this young reader series in reserve just in case something like what is happening now, this situation where I get sent away for a couple weeks, just in case that would come to pass. And now it's here. So, it's the only option available to us if you guys want to have an episode every 2 weeks, like we've done since the beginning of the show. So, listener, on the next episode, I'm going to talk about the infamous Jedi Prince series by Paul Davids and Hollis Davids. It's going to be a doozy. You can hear that episode coming out on August 21st. Listener, thank you so much for tuning in to the Star Wars Legends Lounge today. I'm Aaron Moats. May the Force be with you. And remember, there's always a bit of truth in legends.